Hey everyone, this is Tony D with a screenwriter's take on Altered Carbon, Season 2, Episodes 1 and 2. Very excited about this series and finally got around to starting to watch it. I think it's a good show. It's not quite Blade Runner, but it's in that realm, and Blade Runner is really, the standard, but this gets pretty close to it. It has the feel of a Blade Runner. It deals with this, the idea that technology outstrips man's moral capacity to deal with it. And in this case, it's about immortality. Essentially, you have these characters that they can live forever. For those of you who don't know, Altered Carbon, the premise of the show is, obviously it takes place in the future, and the humans have developed a technology based on alien technology called stacks. And what a stack is, it goes in the back of your head, right below the base of your skull, and it contains your consciousness. So if your body is killed, and they call bodies sleeves, you can have a new body, and they just pop in your stack and off you go. However, there's all sorts of problems with that, obviously. Sleeves on certain planets are not plentiful, and so people sometimes end up with whatever sleeve is available. If you're a criminal and you go to jail, sometimes they take your sleeve away and they'll pop you in to whatever body's available, but there's earlier episodes in the first season when some people are going to reclaim their daughter who died in an accident. She's in the body of an old man and doesn't understand what's happened to her. So it's stuff like that. And the story centers around this character, Kovacs, and he was what's known as an envoy who was like this rebel fighter in this fight hundreds of years ago, and he was dead for a long time, or in his stack for a long time before they finally revived him. And then the first season had a main actor whose name I forget. He was pretty good, and but at the end of the first season, he realizes that he borrowed that body. That was actually one of the characters involved in what went down. You have to see it. It's really good. It's, kind of a detective show, sort of. It was, because he ends up having to solve this mystery. So the current incarnations, and each season, it's apparently the plan is to get a different actor, which is cool. But it's the same character, which is also cool. And they have an actor who plays his original sort of body in flashbacks, and he pops up all the time, although he doesn't talk much. So that's kind of interesting. But Anthony Mackie, who is, of course, Falcon from the MCU, is the character this season. And let me tell you something. As good as the first guy was, and he was really a decent actor, Anthony Mackie really hits the ground running in this season. I think the first two episodes were great. It starts out with Kovacs having to pick up some money that he's owed, and you're not sure what body Kovacs is in, and this guy shows up, a sleazy kind of guy shows up to pay him, and I don't want to give it away. It's kind of hard not to give anything away. A lot is revealed in every episode. But eventually, Anthony Mackie is on the scene, and he is Kovacs, and he has like a super, super cool body that can do all kinds of cool things because it's like a special clone body. And he is back on the same planet that he was, and his sidekick is Poe. And Poe is an AI in the persona of Edgar Allan Poe. And in the first season, he ran a hotel. And in the second season, I don't want to give too much away, but Poe is now more portable. And there's a lot of years that pass between the first episode or the first season and the current season. which is acceptable in this world because of people live an insanely long time. And one of the great things about the series is there's such history to draw from the characters. A little too much history, really. So Kovacs is looking for his lost love, and that's what motivates him. You know, there's lots going on here. He, of course, gets caught up in a bunch of intrigue, and it all has to do with the stacks, how they're made, the materials that make them, that everybody wants to get a piece of. Meanwhile, like, there's this one place they show in episode 2 where they just have thousands and thousands of stacks because there's not enough sleeves to put people back in their bodies, and they're using them because the people who died, they're nobodies, and therefore the people who are using them, they're using them to, they're kind of erasing them, and they're using them so people can experience their experiences. Their lives were worthless, but their experiences are worth lots of money, which of course is highly illegal even in this society, but you know, it's all on the underground. It's all very sleazy, which is one of the appeals of the show. It's just so dark and foreboding, and you know, Kovacs has to watch his back at every turn, and so does Poe. It does have some TV elements to it that are very TV. Poe being the main character that feels the most television-like. It's almost like he's a character out of the CW. But they try to expand him. I mean, as an AI, it's difficult to do that. But they do try to give him kind of a cool heart, I guess you'd say, or a center that calls back to season 1. And you really should watch season 1 before you watch season 2. You know, you could be fine with watching season 2, but you would miss some of the little nuances and some of the callbacks, especially in the first episode. I don't think those are important as the season's going to progress. Doesn't seem like it will be, but I highly recommend Altered Carbon. I think it's a decent show. I don't know about the rest of the season. I've heard mixed things about the rest of the season, but you know, it seems to me a difficult premise to sustain with this particular character because Kovacs is still very dark. He's still a very dark guy. But, you know, they did have a good reason for him to be where he was at the beginning of this season and his situation, you know, so he is very much a reluctant hero, but one of the things that helps the show greatly is that time period that passed, because a lot of time, I think it's like 50 or 60 years has passed since the events of the first show. So, you know, and despite the callbacks, you know, most of those characters will, you know, as humans, will be dead or onto other bodies, which is interesting. And so I highly recommend Altered Carbon. It's playing on Netflix. If you don't have a Netflix account, well, I don't know what to tell you, but that's where it is. And I think, you know, from a screenwriting perspective, the show's very consistent. It's very tough to write characters, I think, who live that long and have such long, ridiculously convoluted histories. It is a little tough to follow in that respect. You got to be tuned in to what's going on. It took me almost the entire 2 episodes to get to the point where I was like, oh, okay, this is this planet, that's that planet. Now I remember. Now I'm remembering where this goes. But I think if you stick with it, Altered Carbon is a good show. Good show, and from a screenwriting and certainly from a sci-fi perspective, I think there's a lot to learn there. You know, and I think it's a good show. Is it a fun show? There's some fun moments, but I think it's a very consistent show. It's dark and foreboding, like I like it. I like shows like that. I don't know about you. It's not a comedy. There's some light moments, but not many. So check it out on Netflix.